Sounds like getting a Series X is going to continue to be an issue well into 2023. But before you put all that time and effort into one, let's take a look at a few of the things that I wish I knew before getting one, so potentially you save yourself some time and some sweat. Hey, I'm Sam with Busy Dad Gaming. I help busy dads figure out what games to play on Xbox and PC so they can relax and go back to their families recharged. It was 1 minute before the new Xbox Series X went live and my heart was racing. I hadn't done an Xbox pre-order since the Xbox Scorpio edition, and I just really hoped my F5 hadn't become rusty in that time. Now the clock rolled over and I just started hitting F5 as fast as humanly possible. As I'm sure you can imagine, the page just refreshed and refreshed over and over again, and I was just hoping to get that little green button to pop up so I could actually get the thing into my cart. And lo and behold, woot, I finally got the thing into my cart, but then I couldn't check out. And then you're sitting there kind of, screaming at the screen because you want the thing to actually check out and take your money, but it's not actually doing it. So by sheer will of the force, I finally got the thing to check out and I got the Series X on day one. But what did I wish I knew before picking up a Series X? Well, suit up, because this is going to take a hot minute, so let's dive into it. Now, one caveat before I jump into the things I wish I knew, there is still a struggle getting a Series X today. You're still contending with scalpers. You're still contending with material shortages, which are expected to go through 2023, and you still have the pandemic ongoing. So when that comes to pass, you're looking at one of three things when it comes to getting a Series X. One is either you're putting in more time, more effort, or more money. And hopefully, as we go through these things I wish I knew, it's going to save you at least in one of those. Now, the first thing I wish I knew before grabbing a Series X was that you're most likely going to need to upgrade your equipment. Now, the Series X is HDMI 2.1, which means you can technically get up to 4K 120. Now, these TVs are still relatively expensive. They're just now starting to hit the mainstream. And monitors are even a different discussion because they typically, if you're going after 4K 120, are even more expensive than a TV. Now, what this means is that you also have the price of the box and potentially the price of the TV. So from an upgrade perspective, to take full advantage of the Series X, that means that you're going to have to take those two things into account. Just keep it in mind. It can get pricey. Now, another area I wish I knew before I got the Series X was how impactful Quick Resume was actually going to be. I got the Series X on launch day, which was well before I got my Series S, and the Series X and Quick Resume in general can support up to 5 different games at once. So that means it's almost kind of like a Netflix effect where you can go ahead and bounce between 5 different games and just go right to where you left off. The only caveat to this is if it's an online only game, which means it'll just kick you back to the login screen anyway. Because of this, I was jumping between like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Psychonauts 2, Hitman 2, Dirt 5, and now Origami 2. So it's really cool to have Quick Resume to jump right back into where you left off. For me personally, with a 7-month-old, it's almost become a necessity. Now, the next thing I wish I knew before I got the Series X, and this is more so if you're in content creation, but the game capture on the Series X is no bueno. I mean, it's decent in that it actually captures footage. It does what it's supposed to, but there's some issues around the footage, getting it transferred into other mediums to potentially edit it. The editing on the Series X is not very good either, so just keep that in mind. From a content creation standpoint, and this isn't really going to affect too many people, but the PS5 just does this way better than the Series X does. Now, another thing I really wish I knew before grabbing a Series X was just how much Microsoft was going to invest in their backwards compatibility. So for backwards compatible games, it's not only making them look better in some cases, it's also increasing the frame rate without the developers having to invest any time or money to do that, which is an amazing thing. With FPS boost, especially on the Series X, in some cases it's pushing things up to 60 frames per second, and in other games it's pushing it up to 120 frames per second. So if you want the best performance from a backwards compatibility perspective, the Series X is obviously going to be the best choice here. But man, going from 30 to 120 frames per second is life-changing. Now, the next thing I wish I knew was that the Xbox does have family monitoring. Now, for me personally, I have a 7-month-old, so it's not very applicable to me yet. But for many of you dads out there, what this does is that you can go ahead and use the Xbox Family app, and this allows you to limit what games and who they can play those games with. So in this case, if you have that bad influence down the road, you can finally block them. So this next one I wish I knew was something that I knew of back on the Xbox One X, but wasn't something I really took advantage of until I got the Series X, and that is that you can customize the guide. As I mentioned, Xbox has had this functionality for quite a while, but for some odd reason, a lot of people don't even know that it exists. So in this case, I went through and customized the guide, so I ended up stripping out a lot of the stuff like entertainment and music and all those different things that I will literally never use. I went ahead and removed them from the guide, so I'd never see them again. Now, out of all of the things I wish I knew the most was that the Series X is going to require you to upgrade your equipment. You are going to need to get a TV or monitor to fully take advantage of it, and that is going to be a pricey investment. So that, more so than anything else, is what I wish I knew before I got the Series X. Now, coming at this from a dad's perspective, most people will not need a Series X. Now, I say that because it does have a potentially high barrier of entry because you have the box and the TV. So you're going to be looking at, in the $2,000 range just to get the full use out of that box. That's just something to keep in mind. Now, who is the Series X actually for then? So in this case, it's usually geared more towards the hardcore crowd or those that want the latest and greatest in technology. You're also looking at those dads that are early adopters and really like to get their hands on the tech. It's also dads that already have the necessary equipment in place. So you already have a 4K 120 TV and you want to take full advantage of that panel. The other thing, and the caveat to this, is for dads who are already in the Xbox ecosystem and already have a plan to upgrade later anyway. So in that particular case, you're getting the Series X and you already know you're going to get a TV down the road, so you might as well just plan for it now. So then, who is the Series X not for? In this case, it's for dads that play games more casually, and in this case, just go with the Series S. You're better off because A, lower price point, and then couple it with Game Pass. It's just a much better value at this point than going with the Series X. It's also for dads who already own a PS5, because in that case, you already have that PS5. It doesn't make sense to go a Series X unless you really want the best from both companies to hit that 4K 120 range. The other thing is for dads that don't plan to upgrade their equipment over the next few years. So like I mentioned with the Series X, you already plan to upgrade and you're going to upgrade relatively soon. Whereas with those that don't want to upgrade over the next 2 to 3 years, you're better off going with the Series S at that point. To make sure you're really getting the most out of a Series X, make sure to check out my video on what TV and monitors are going to make the most sense to get the most out of that shiny new box. And if you're still on the fence about a Series X, make sure to check out my review of the Series X, and I'll see you over there.